Hi, welcome to this evening's webinar, An Interesting View of Prophecy. This is something way different than what I normally do, and when I first decided to do this, I was thinking, oh, I'll probably get like 20 or 30 people who actually get on or whatever, and I've had like over 400 people sign up for this, and I already have almost 75 on, so we'll see how this goes. So let's start off and talk about why I'm doing this. I was having a discussion with one of my friends, Gary, who will be on a little bit later, and I was mentioning some things about some of my viewpoints on prophecy, and he said, wow, I need this information. And I thought, well, yeah, maybe I should do a webinar on it. And then I was actually promoting my book, The Heart's Key to Health, Happiness, and Success, on a program called Spiritually Raw. And I was listening to somebody, preaching some, interpretation of prophecy and everything, and something inside of me snapped, because it was just like, oh my gosh, I just knew that viewpoint just doesn't hold water if you really understand what it's talking about. So I decided to go ahead and put this together and just, put some ideas out. And when I started putting it together, I had in mind of just covering some really basic stuff, and as I got into it, it's just like it just kept expanding. The biggest problem I had was knowing where to stop. I could have, put together a presentation that would have lasted all day on this, so I had to kind of like pare it down, and some of the stuff I had hoped to get to, I didn't, because I felt like it was important to give some real background about why doing this. So one thing I wanted to just let everybody know, a little bit about my spiritual background. I don't actually belong to any church, so I'm not trying to convert you to anything. I was raised Mormon, which definitely colors the way I view things, so that's just something to keep in mind. But the big thing I wanted to tell you is when I was 20 years old, I surrendered my life to God in prayer, and from that time forward, I have had spiritual experiences of hearing the still small voice of Spirit speak to me and teach me things. And what I'm going to teach you tonight all started when I had an experience that I'll talk about 3/4 of the way through this presentation. I'll tell you what happened to me that actually put me on to understanding this information. And this is kind of typically the way things have gone in my life, is I'll get that little voice telling me something, and then I have to go out and figure out why it's true. So it's kind of what I call a top-down learning. I also have a big interest in prophecy because when I was younger, and I did a webinar on this earlier, I had some waking visions of basically the collapse of Western civilization that made me really interested in this. But in doing this, I'm claiming that I'm not claiming I'm a prophet. I'm not claiming I'm anybody who you should follow or whatever. I'm just giving you some thoughts about things to consider. And with that, I've got to give you some background in this whole thing, starting with Noah. Way back in the Bible, Noah had 3 sons, and he basically Ham's son Canaan, he cursed for a reason we don't get into right now, and then he blessed the Lord God of Shem, which was another one of his sons, Shem, and then he said that God would enlarge Japheth, and Japheth would dwell in the tents of Shem. And then it goes on to say that out of Japheth came Gomer, Magog, Tubal, Meshach, and this is important for things we're going to be talking about later, and the isles of the Gentiles were divided up. So descending from Shem came a man named Abraham, and Abraham was visited by God, and he was told that I'll make you a great nation, and bless thee and make thy name great, and bless them that bless thee, and curse them that curse thee, and in thee shall all families of the earth be blessed. And then God says, by myself I have sworn. In other words, this is not a conditional prophecy. This is a unconditional prophecy. God's going to do it. It's not conditioned on anybody being righteous or obedient or whatever. that in blessing thee and multiplying thee, I will multiply thy seed as the stars of heaven and the sands of the sea, and thy seed shall possess the gates of the enemies, and thy seed shall all nations of the earth be blessed. So Abram had a son Isaac, and he passed this promise on and said, I will perform the oath which I swore unto Abraham thy father, and will make thy seed multiply as the stars of heaven, and and all nations here shall be blessed. Everybody is muted on this. Someone made a thing about being muted. Everybody's muted because I'm the only one who's allowed to talk right now. Anyway, if you have a question or comment, you can always type it in. So Abram had another son, Ishmael, where many Arab peoples descended from him, and Isaac then had a son named Jacob, and he blessed his son Jacob with the God give thee the dew of heaven and the fatness of the earth, and let people serve thee, and nations bow down before thee, and be lord over thy brethren. And Jacob was one of two sons. The elder was named Esau, and Jacob actually got the blessing instead of Esau, but he became the birthright. So thus we have Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, all of which had this promise that that a great nation would come of their descendants, that they would bless the whole world, and so forth. Jacob's name got changed to Israel, and when that name change occurred, it says, I am God Almighty, be fruitful and multiply a nation. Because notice before, Abraham and Isaac were promised that they would have a nation born of them, but he says a nation and a company of nations, or in other words, a group of nations shall come of thee, and kings shall come out of thy loin, and I'll give the same land. So Jacob had 12 sons, so they are the 12 sons of Jacob, or 12 tribes of Israel, and I've numbered them here in the order of their birth. Leah was one of Jacob's wives, and then one of her handmaidens also became one of his wives, and then Rachel was the other wife of Jacob. So there were two main wives, and then the wives' handmaidens who bore children. Joseph, who was the 11th son, the one that got sold into Egypt by his brothers, had two sons in Egypt called Manasseh and Ephraim, and they were half Egyptian because they were born to an Egyptian princess that Joseph married. So that being half Egyptian, Jacob, or Israel, adopted them. He said, and basically what he did is he put the birthright blessing on them, the seed of Joseph. In other words, Ephraim and Manasseh, he basically said, I will make them a multitude of people, and they will be mine. In other words, they'll be my children. And he went on to say, the angel which redeemed me from all evil, bless the lads, and let my name be named upon them. In other words, let the name of Isaac be named upon them, and the names of the name of Jacob, or Israel. Let the name of Israel, for the name of Jacob, be upon these two lads, and also the names of their fathers, Isaac and Abraham, and let them grow into a multitude in the midst of the earth. So basically, Joseph did when he brought the sons to Jacob, or Israel, he brought them so that the Manasseh would be on the right side to be, to get the right hand, and Ephraim the left, and Jacob crossed his hands and put the opposite hand on the opposite son's head, and Joseph didn't like that, and he said, don't do that, Manasseh is the firstborn, and Jacob said, I know, Manasseh will be a great people, and his name will be great, but his younger brother, Ephraim, shall be greater than he, and his seed shall become a multitude of nations. Remember the promise that there would be a company of nations? Now that promise has gone down to Ephraim, that Ephraim would become a multitude of nations. So that promise called the birthright, and I'm laying all this background because I don't know how much biblical knowledge people who are here have. And without that, you really can't understand what I'm going to explain about future prophecies if we don't have like the historical background to understand the peoples we're talking about. So I am a father to Israel, and Ephraim is my firstborn, says Jeremiah. Basically what it is that Joseph and his son Ephraim, and to a lesser degree Manasseh, inherited the birthright promise, which in a review of those promises, the descendants would be multiplied. They would become both a nation and a company of nations, or a multitude of nations, or in other words, a whole bunch of nations, that they would have power over their enemies, that they would be a blessing to all the other nations of the earth, or all the other families of the earth. And so this is actually the specific blessing that Israel gave to Joseph. And I have highlighted some things that are important to remember because this is going to come up later. Joseph is a fruitful bough. In other words, plentiful descendants. Even a fruitful bough by the well whose branches run over the wall. In other words, so fruitful that it can't be contained in the space that it's in. The archers have sorely grieved him and shot at him and hated him, but his bow abode in strength. And the arms of his hands were made strong by the hands of the mighty God of Jacob. From thence is the shepherd, the stone of Israel, even the God of thy father, who shall help thee, and the Almighty, who shall bless thee with the blessings of heaven above, the blessings of the deep that lieth under, blessings of the breasts and of the womb. Now this is the interesting part. And again, this is something I want you to bear in mind when you're doing this. The blessings of thy father, in other words, who was Joseph's father? Israel, or Jacob. There's the blessing that was given to Jacob or Israel, have prevailed above the blessings of my progenitors. In other words, I have received a greater promise or a greater blessing than Abraham or Isaac got. And this shall be, and that blessing extends to the utmost bound of the everlasting hills. And this blessing that went beyond what Abraham and Isaac were given, shall be on the head of Joseph, on the crown of the head of him who was separated from his brethren. So the important points here to remember are Joseph's seed would be so numerous that they would run over the wall, suggesting they would depart for other lands. Joseph's seed would have enemies, but they would prevail above them with God's help. Joseph's seed would receive both spiritual from above blessings and material from beneath blessings. Israel or Jacob received a special promise that above the promises given to Abraham and Isaac that extended to the utmost bound of the everlasting hills. And this initial blessing was given exclusively to Joseph's descendants. And there's a hint that Joseph's descendants would be separated from the rest of Israel. Now Judah was also given a blessing. And Judah says, Judah, thou art him whom thy brethren shall praise, and thy hands shall be on the neck of thine enemies, and thy father's children shall bow down before thee. Judah is a lion's whelp. From the prey, my son, thou art gone up. He stooped down, he crouched down as a lion, and as an old lion, who shall rouse him up? The scepter shall not depart from Judah, nor a lawgiver from between his feet, until Shiloh come, and to him will the gathering of his people be. And some stuff, the imagery, which basically, from reading some books of Hebrew idioms, are all idioms for being very blessed and having great prosperity with the wine and the milk and everything. Moses also blessed Joseph, saying, blessed of the Lord is his land, and then described how blessed the land of Joseph would be, and again ends with the one who is separated from his brethren. Moses also said of Joseph, his glory is the firstling of a bullock, and his horns are the horns of unicorns. Unicorn was a wild ox that lived in the Middle East, but with them he shall push the people together to the ends of the earth, and they are the 10,000s of Ephraim and the thousands of Manasseh. So, having all those promises, now a little history lesson. Children of Israel became slaves in Egypt, were brought out of Egypt by Moses to the land promised to their fathers. Moses gave them laws, a system of government known as the reign of the judges, where those laws applied equally to all. Everybody had to obey the law. In other words, it was a law that was applied equally, and the people, were free, other than having to live the provisions of that law. eventually the people wanted to be like other nations and have a king, so they got given a king. They got, first of all, King Saul, and then after that, King David and Solomon ruled over the people. David was a descendant of Judah in fulfillment of the promise that the rest of Jacob's children would bow down to Judah, that the lawgiver would be, that he wouldn't want for a lawgiver beneath his feet, and that he was given the promise of the scepter, the right to rule. And David received a promise that he would have someone to rule over Israel forever, someone of his descendants to rule over Israel. Of course, and also if he says, even if your descendants are unrighteous, I'll chastise them, but I won't take away the kingdom from them. That's what David was told. So after Solomon, the kingdom was split because Solomon committed wickedness, and so God said, your kingdom's going to be divided. Your son's not going to have it all. So the majority of the tribes, Levites were scattered among the whole of the nation of Israel. But so in the southern kingdom, there was half of the tribe of Benjamin and the Levites that were living there. So Judah was ruling over a little bit of the children of Israel, but the rest of them, the other 10.5 tribes, became the northern kingdom. And this is the important thing to remember. The southern kingdom was called Judah, and the northern kingdom was called Israel. So the name of, and originally they were led by a descendant of Ephraim, but Judah had twins. The one who was born first, out of him came the lineage of King David. The one that was born second, who had a scarlet thread tied around his hand, one of his descendants eventually became the king and established a dynasty over the northern nation of Israel. So descendants of the tribe of Judah ruled over both Judea in the south and Israel in the north. And this is where most people really, really get everything mixed up when they're interpreting Old Testament prophecies. Because all of the major prophets of the Old Testament, Isaiah, Ezekiel, Jeremiah, Daniel, Hosea, all of them prophesied after the nations were split in two. So Israel was the northern 10 tribes, the southern 10 tribes, the Jews were Judea. Okay, and eventually the northern kingdom was conquered by Assyria at the time of Isaiah and Ezekiel. They were freed from their captivity later, and they went north and became lost to history, and they became known as the lost 10 tribes. The southern kingdom was conquered by Babylon at the time of Jeremiah. And after they were freed from captivity, the southern kingdom, the Jews, the Judea, returned to live back in the area of Palestine until at the time of the Roman Empire, after the time of Jesus, they were conquered and scattered. So there were two main families in Israel. Leah's family, who that Judah received a portion of the birthright. That would be that all the children of Israel would bow to Judah's descendants, that they would hold the right to the scepter, the ruling power. Kings would be born of this lineage. The Messiah would come from this lineage. Jesus descended from that lineage, from Judah. And these descendants are known as the Jews, Judea. So whenever in the Old Testament prophecies they're talking about the Jews, they refer to them as Jerusalem or Judea. Okay? Now the Rachel's family, Rachel was the favored wife. Leah was kind of dark and kind of mysterious. Rachel was more fair, and she was actually Jacob's first choice in a wife. He got tricked into marrying the other one. But they got the birthright, and the birthright was that They would be very fruitful. Many nations would be born of their descendants. They would be blessed with great prosperity. They would bless all the nations of the earth. They would push the people together from the ends of the earth. So where are they? Okay, where are the people who inherited the birthright? Where are the people who got the blessings? Where are the people of Israel? The people who live in the current nation of Palestine are not the Israelites. They're the Jews. They're Judea. They are not the tribes of Israel because they are only one of the tribes. In fact, there weren't 12 tribes, there were 13 tribes because Joseph received a double portion. So when you split Joseph into Ephraim and Manasseh, there were actually 13 tribes. Manasseh became the 13th tribe, with Ephraim being the tribe that represented Joseph. So the Jews are one of those tribes, and they didn't even inherit the birthright. Okay, they inherited the right to rule and the promise that the Messiah would be born through that lineage, but they didn't inherit the birthright promises that were given to Abraham and Isaac. So according to the way most people interpret biblical prophecy, God's original prophecies were not fulfilled because they look at, and equate Judah and Israel as the same thing when they're interpreting prophecies. But if we look at this, someone says I'm cutting out now and then, but if I'm, I don't know, that I've only had one person report that. Sometimes it happens on their end. So this, again, I'm giving historical background because I realized I couldn't even begin to explain what I'm interpreting until I give enough historical background, because most people, I don't know how much of this they know. Israel was under a covenant. Basically, they were a covenant people. Meaning that they were under a covenant with God, which was likened to a marriage. Basically, the idea was, okay, God says, you follow me, you obey my laws, and I will protect you, I will take care of you, I will prosper you in the land, I will be your God, you will be my people. So the northern kingdom of Israel, and someone just asked me, would you explain why the current Jews in the current Israel are not Israel? Because they're Judah. Because the Jews are the southern kingdom of Judah. They are one of the 13 tribes of Israel. There are actually a whole bunch of others. Okay, so the northern kingdom, which was known as Israel, because Jacob said, "Let my name be named upon the lads." So the tribe of Ephraim carried the name of Israel, not the tribe of Judah. Okay, so because they worshipped other gods and sacrificed to idols and everything, God divorced them. He basically said, you're adulterers. You aren't loyal to your husband here. And so here's a couple of quotes in the scripture. When for all the causes wherewith backsliding Israel committed adultery, I had her put away, and I gave her a bill of divorcement. In Old Testament law, if you had a wife that was, nasty to you and whatever, you gave her a writing of divorcement, said, go on your way, you're free, bye, take your dowry and your part of the inheritance and go find somebody else. So Isaiah says a similar thing. Where is the bill of your mother's divorcement? Whom have I put you away, or to which of my creditors have I sold you? Behold, for your iniquities you sold yourselves, and for your transgressions your mother put away. In other words, so God divorced the northern nation of Israel. He says, I'm not going to be your God anymore. Okay, divorced Israel then, was told they were going to be scattered. So this is from Ezekiel, and Ezekiel actually was with, if I remember correctly, he was actually with some of the people of Israel, the northern kingdom, that got carried away captive by the Assyrians. So basically a lot of his prophecies are dealing with Israel. He says, Son of man, when the house of Israel dwelt in their own land, they defiled it by their ways and their doings, wherefore I poured out my fury upon them for the blood they had shed in the land, and for their idols wherewith they had polluted them, and I scattered them among the heathen, and they were dispersed among the countries according to their ways and their doings. Now, Israel was dispersed but retained an identity of who they were. Israel did not. But it says all through the Old Testament that God did not forget Israel. Now remember, Israel is not Judah. Get that straight. Israel is the northern 10 tribes, the rest of the tribes. So even though it says Israel is forgotten, and Israel's been put away, God hasn't forgotten her. Listen, O isles, unto me, and hearken, ye people from afar. This is the beginning of how this particular chapter in Isaiah begins. He says, Zion said, the Lord hath forsaken me, and my Lord has forgotten me. And then God says, but can a woman forget her suckling child, that she should not have compassion on the fruit of her womb? Yea, they may forget, but I will not forget thee. In other words, a mother might be able to forget her child that she, gave birth to and nursed, but I won't be able to forget you. For thou shalt forget the shame of thy youth, and shall not remember the reproach of thy widowhood any more. For thy maker is the husband, the Lord of hosts is the name, the Redeemer of Israel, the God of the whole earth shall he be called, the Redeemer of Israel. Remember, Isaiah was prophesying at the time that the northern kingdom got carried away captive by the Assyrians, and the northern kingdom was called Israel. So the Redeemer of Israel, hadn't forgotten them. And furthermore, Isaiah says that even while they were divorced, after God says, I'm not going to be your God, I'm going to let you get scattered, that they would still be multiplied. Okay? For ye are, now this is actually, first part comes from Hosea, where he says, tell this to Israel, ye are not my people, and I will not be your God. He was speaking to the northern kingdom of Israel. Yet the number of the children of Israel shall be as the sand of the sea, which cannot be measured or numbered. So even though I've said, you're not my people, yet even then, the children of Israel will be as the sand of the sea that can't be measured or numbered. And it shall come to pass in the place where it was, or in other words, where it will be said of them, you're not my people, it will be said to you, you are the sons of the living God. Now, keep that in mind. That's really, really important. And I hope I can get through this without crying, because there's some really beautiful stuff in here that really touches my heart. So Isaiah says, sing, O barren, thou that dost not bear, for more are the children of the desolate than the children of the married wife, saith the Lord. Okay? So enlarge the place of thy tent, let stretch forth the curtains of thy inhabitants, for thou shalt break forth on the right hand and the left, and thy seed shall inherit the Gentiles, and thou shalt make the desolate cities to be inhabited. But these prophecies, in the context it took them in, it was speaking of Israel. And again, Old Testament prophets understood that Israel was the 10 tribes, not the people of Judea. Furthermore, these same prophets said that God would again marry Israel, that he would take her again some future day back to be his bride. For the Lord hath called thee as a woman forsaken and grieved in spirit, as a wife of the youth, when thou wast refused, saith the Lord. So remember, it was the northern kingdom that God divorced. Says, you're not going to be my people anymore. You're the wife of the youth was put away. For a small moment have I forgotten thee, but with great mercies will I gather thee. And in a little wrath I hid my face from thee, but with everlasting kindness will I have mercy on thee, saith the Lord thy Redeemer. I will allure her, and I will bring her into the wilderness, speaking again of Israel, and speak comfortably to her, and I will betroth thee unto me forever. I will marry you again forever, in righteousness, and in judgment, and in loving kindness, and in mercies. And I will have mercy upon her that had not obtained mercy. And I will say unto them that were not my people, thou art my people. And thou shalt say, thou art my God. So there's the promise. He's saying, okay, he divorced them, not my people, but he says, I will woo you again to me. I'll make you again mine, and I will be your Lord, and you will be my people. So this is again coming in Ezekiel. Okay. But I had pity for mine holy name, which the house of Israel profaned among the heathen. House of Israel got carried away by the Assyrians. They went blah, 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 disappeared, and they profaned God's holy name among the heathen. I do not do this for your sakes. Not doing this because of you, O house of Israel, but for mine holy name's sake, and I will sanctify my great name. And I will put my spirit into you and cause you to watch my statutes and should do my judgments and keep them, and should dwell in the land that I gave your fathers, and you will be my people, and I will be your God. And again, this is not Judea. The Jews who have resettled in Jerusalem cannot be the fulfillment of these prophecies because they were known to all of these prophets as Judea or Jerusalem. Israel was the birthright people, the ones who inherited the promises made to Abraham and Isaac and Jacob, led by the people of Ephraim, who were the people of inheriting the birthright. And this is, for those of you, being recorded, and I will post these handouts with the recording when I do this, so you can review this and go through this and see if I'm not telling the truth this. So if the Old Testament prophecies are true, then the descendants of the 10 tribes, and Joseph in particular, must have become many nations. Because that was the promise. I will make of thee a multitude of nations. Okay? That means the descendants of Ephraim and Manasseh would have inherited the birthright promise, have to constitute a large and very powerful part of the modern world's population. Specifically, they have to have become a powerful nation and a company or group of powerful nations. They have to have prevailed above other nations in warfare. They have to be very wealthy and prosperous nations, since those promises said that they would be blessed with a great abundance and wealth in their land. They would have to be people who have blessed the whole world, that is, brought spiritual and or material blessings to the rest of mankind. Okay? Otherwise, promises made to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and then passed on to Ephraim and Manasseh never got fulfilled. So here is the trick. This is the thing that most people don't know. Since the 10 tribes went north after their captivity in Assyria, it appears that they went into the area known as Europe and became the people of Europe. Tradition suggests that the descendants of Ephraim settled in Ireland along with part of the tribe of Dan and the royal house of Judah, and it's very likely that other nations of Europe are also descendants of the 10 tribes, making the entire Western civilization the fulfillment of the promises made to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. The tribes are lost only because they lost the knowledge of who they are. In fact, I may have actually grabbed the wrong version of this because I've been like dabbling with this. I actually found a little thing, and I'll give you the reference to it. That we now have archaeological evidence that has uncovered the well, let's see if it comes up here a little bit later. If it doesn't, I'll tell you about it. So anyway, this is from Jeremiah. He says, "Therefore, behold, the days come, saith the Lord, that it shall no more be said, the Lord liveth that brought the children of Israel out of the land of Egypt." In other words, all that great miraculous thing of Moses leading the children of Israel says, that won't be the big thing anymore. It's the Lord liveth that brought the children of Israel from the land of the north, where they went, and from all the lands where he hath driven them. Behold, I will send many fishers, saith the Lord, and they shall fish them. And after that, I'll send many hunters, and they shall hunt them from every mountain and from every hill. Jesus said, "I am not sent but unto the lost sheep of the house of Israel." And he told his disciples, "I will make you fishers of men." Jesus came to his own people, the house of Judah. They rejected him and crucified him. And after he died and was resurrected, he sent his people, his disciples, to preach to the Gentiles. In the New Testament, Jesus is the bridegroom and his followers are the bride. Is it possible that the people who accepted the new covenant were actually the descendants of the lost 10 tribes who remarried the Lord that they had previously been previously forsaken? And what nations accepted this? Jeremiah said this, Behold, the days come, saith the Lord, I will make a new covenant with who? With the house of Israel and with the house of Judah. Notice the separation. Judah and Israel, they're different, right? They're not the same. This is where everybody in interpreting all these prophecies, the Old Testament, they think that the Jews are Israel. The Jews were a part of Israel, okay, but they're a small part of Israel, and they weren't even the part of Israel that inherited the birthright promises. Not according to the covenant which I made with their fathers in the day I took them out of the land of Egypt, which covenant they broke, although I was a husband unto them. See again the metaphor. I was the husband. They broke my covenant. I divorced them. I cast them off. But I'm going to make a new covenant with them, and it'll be different. It'll be a different one than the one I made with their fathers. Look at this. And this is so beautiful, look at how beautiful this is. But this shall be the covenant which I will make with the house of Israel. After those days, saith the Lord, I will put my law in their inward parts and will write it on their hearts. And I will be their God, and they will be my own people. When John the Baptist was born, Zacharias basically prophesied of the mission of Christ, and he said, Blessed be the Lord God of Israel, for he has visited and redeemed his people and has raised salvation for us through the house of his servant David, that we should be saved from our enemies and from them that hate us, to perform his mercy, the mercies promised to our fathers. Who were the mercies promised to our fathers? That Israel, not just Judea, that Israel would be redeemed, that Israel would be visited and wooed and brought back into the covenant with tender mercies. And to remember the holy covenant, the oath made to his father Abraham. In a little wrath have I hid, so then coming back to Jeremiah, in a little wrath I hid my face from thee for a moment, with everlasting kindness will I show mercy unto thee, saith the Lord thy Redeemer. That's Isaiah. This is again speaking of divorced Israel. And then from Jeremiah, is Ephraim my dear son? Is he a pleasant child? For since I spake against him, I do earnestly remember him still. Therefore my bowels are troubled for him, and I will surely have mercy on him. Here, I did put this stuff in here. So look at this. This is archaeological evidence. This is actually a quote from a book I found called Heirs of the Promise by Shelton Emery, that what the problem has been in tracing the people of Israel is that they lost the name of them. So they found this stone that basically describes when the Israelites brought tribute, and it names them, and they called them the Gaian people. So basically the Assyrians called them Gomar or Kumar, and basically in the Greeks referred to the Gomer that the Assyrians referred to as the Cameroni or Cimmerian, okay, the Cimmerian, because the capital of the northern kingdom was Samaria. The Cimmerians, okay? So the Greeks called these people the Cimmerians, and once you pick up that line of thread, that these people that called the Gamer in Assyria became to the Greeks the Cimmerians. History books picked that up at that point. The Cimmerians moved to an area known as the southern Russia became known as the Scythians, and the Cimmerians then migrated west and became the Celts, the Gauls, and the Cimbri. The Germans called the Scythians, the Romans called the Scythians Germans. The Greeks called them Galatians. Some of the Galatians or Gauls settled in the area known as France. Some of them moved into Spain and became known as the Ebers, the Gaelic name for the Hebrews. And the Ebers moved to Ireland, became known as the Scots, and later into northern Britain to establish Scotland. Some of the Celts then settled in the British Isles. The Germanic tribes broke up to become the Anglos and Saxons, the Anglo-Saxons that basically wound up settling England. The Danes, the Danish, okay, the Vikings, okay, the Gothic nations, the French, blah, blah, blah. In short, the entire Europe are descendants of children of Israel. God didn't forget his promises. Even in their divorced state, he multiplied them and they became great people. Many nations, a multitude of nations grew out of the loins of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, just as they were promised that those nations would grow. These people were never lost physically. They just lost their identity. They lost the understanding of who they were. Now, here's what's interesting. Who are the nations that became Christian? Who adopted the Bible? Pretty much the European nations. African nations didn't do it. The Oriental nations didn't do it, but the European nations did. This is because when the apostles were sent to preach, they were preaching to the lost tribes of Israel, the lost sheep of the house of Israel. God again wooed his people to make them the sons of the living God. And all of these inventions and discoveries and innovations and advancements that have blessed the entire world came from the descendants of these people. Now this is one I think is really interesting. Dan received a blessing from Jacob. It says, Dan shall judge his people as one of the tribes of Israel. Dan shall be a serpent by the way, an adder in the path. Dan is a lion's whelp. He shall leap from Bashan. In other words, leap from the area where he had settled. In the Bible, everywhere that Dan went, they named the place Dan. Dan this, Dan that, Dan the other. So the tribe of Dan became seafarers and took ships and started sailing all over the place. And in Hebrew, you don't have vowels. So Dan, Dun, Din, Don, Den are all derivations of Dan in Hebrew, which means to judge. And Europe is filled with the trail of Dan, by which you can judge the migration of the people of Israel. The Dan-ish, which by the way, ish in Hebrew means man, so that literally means in Hebrew, the men of Dan. Denmark, the land of Dan. The Scandinavians, the Danube, Lund Dan, the done this, the done that, the done all through that. So, look at this. Out of the promise of Isaac, that his descendants would become a nation and a company of nations, we have America was gathered from people and had 13 colonies, symbolic of the reunion of the 13 tribes. Put God as the head of their government when they said that we're endowed by our Creator with inalienable rights, and I'm going to explain that in a minute. We became a world power and have blessed all other nations, both with material blessings, but also with where do most of the missionaries in the world that go out to minister to other nations come from America and from Europe, the UK also. The inhabitants of the United Kingdom, look, oh, listen, O isles, unto me. Okay, this tiny little nation, this one little island nation in Great Britain, conquered most of the world. They had huge control over China. They conquered India, South Africa, Australia, New Zealand. They formed the United States and Canada. They basically, their branches ran over the wall everywhere. They possessed the gates of their enemies. They controlled the ports of all major areas in the world. So either the UK but more in general, the whole of the European nations are a company of nations that fulfill the promise. This is really interesting. Judah is a lion's whelp. All through the Bible, Judah is portrayed as a lion, and Ephraim as a unicorn or an ox. And look at the British royal coat of arms. On the one side, the lion. On the other side, the unicorn. Okay, God in my right. According to the traditions, the Ephraimites went with them and took with them a, well, actually I've got this here. So Judah's lion's whelp, blah, blah, blah. According to the Bible, the reign of the house of David over Israel ended 500 years before Christ, when Babylon came in and got rid of the royal dynasty of Judah, and so for 500 years they didn't have their own kings. So how was the promise to David that he would never want for someone ruling over the house of Israel? Well, is it really possible that the royal families of Europe are actually descendants of the tribe of Judah who went into the north country? Jeremiah was told in the beginning of his mission that he says, I have set thee over nations and over kingdoms to root out, to pull down, and to destroy, and to throw down. And that's all through the Bible. You read about here, he prophesied the downfall of this, prophesied the downfall of that, prophesied the downfall of that. But he was also told, and to build and to plant. Well, there are traditions that Jeremiah, who according to the Bible had two of the king's daughters with him when he went down and was drugged down into Egypt by the remaining commander of the guard, and that he took on ships of the tribe of Dan and sold and married those daughters into the royal houses of Spain and Great Britain, putting on the throne, still ruling, because the Messiah hasn't come yet to gather the people, still ruling over the house of Israel in absolute unconditional fulfillment of the promises God made in the Bible. So, wow. Ephraim, remember, his glory is the glory of the Borlock, his horns are the horns of unicorn. Ephraim wound up in the British Isles and became the Anglo-Saxons, Isaac's sons, Saxons, and that Judah and Ephraim came back together in this country. There's another little thing that I found in my research is the Ephraimites in the Old Testament had a hard time pronouncing the H sound. You know, they had difficulty saying it. So there was a test that they were given by the men of Gilead who made them say the word Shibboleth, and if they said Sibboleth, they were Ephraimites because they couldn't say the H properly. There are still a whole bunch of people in the UK who have problems making the H sound. By the way, in Hebrew, Brith-ish means covenant people, and Brith-tan means covenant land. And that's what the ancient British people called themselves, the Brith-ish of the Brith-tan, the covenant people of the covenant land. Poets and artists often tap into a deeper spiritual place. It's what makes Carl Jung said we have a collective unconscious, that there's a place deep inside of us that recognizes symbols, that recognizes things. And when we have something that's really powerful that touches our hearts, it's because it's reaching into something that we don't even know where it's coming from inside of us. Look at this poem, Recessional, by Rudyard Kipling. God of our fathers. Did he know he was a descendant of those fathers? Probably not. Lord of our far-flung battle line beneath whose awful hand we hold, dominion over palm and pine. God of hosts, be with us yet, let we forget. Still stands thine ancient sacrifice and humble and a contrite heart. Even though Israel no longer knew who they were, God still was using them. British people colonized America and many of them seeking religious freedom. Could this be part of the foreshadowed branches running over the wall? Another nation that colonized America was the Spanish. I wonder sometimes, even though I haven't found evidence of that, if the Spanish weren't of the tribe of Manasseh, although Mormons believe that some of the Native American peoples are the tribe of Manasseh. Notice our great seal of our nation, out of many one. 13 colonies symbolizing the reunion of the 13 tribes, the olive branch from the Middle East, the arrows. Remember, his bow abode in strength, and the arms of his hands were made strong by the hands of the mighty God of Jacob. The eagle was a symbol of the tribe of Dan, who built ships. Of course, Ephraimites were half Egyptian. Ephraim and Manasseh were half Egyptian as well. The founding fathers knew they were doing something important. Providence approved our undertakings. This is what these words on the things mean, a new order for the ages. So, this is what Ezekiel says, and this is where I'm going to getting close to talking to you about what I actually originally was us all about. I've just laid the groundwork so you can understand why. Ezekiel said, I will take the children of Israel from among the heathen, whither they have gone, and will gather them on every side and bring them to their own land. And I will make them one nation in the land of the mountains of Israel, and one king shall be king over them, and they shall no more be two nations. And David, my servant, shall be king over them, and they shall have one shepherd, and they shall also walk in my judgments and observe my statutes and do them. And they shall dwell in the land that I gave to, not to Abraham and Isaac, to Jacob. The blessings of thy father have prevailed above the blessings of my progenitors unto the utmost bound of the everlasting hills, the mountains of Jacob, the mountains of Israel. And these shall be on the heads of Joseph, on the crown of the head of him who was separated from his brethren. And he goes on, and this is from Isaiah. And it shall come to pass in that day that the Lord shall set his hand a second time to recover the remnant of his people, and he shall set up an ensign to the nations and assemble the outcasts of Israel. Israel was outcast, divorced, and the dispersed of Judah. Judah, who knew who they were just scattered. Okay, and gather them from the four corners of the earth. The envy of Ephraim shall depart, and the adversaries of Judah will be cut off. And Ephraim shall not envy Judah, and Judah shall not expect Ephraim, but they shall fly on the shoulders of the Philistines towards the west. And they shall spoil them of the east together. Again, I mentioned artists sometimes say things, and we don't... This is a song I always found very inspiring by Neil Diamond, who, by the way, was son of Polish and Romanian immigrants. Far, we've been traveling far, without a home, but not without a star. Free, only want to be free. We huddle close, hang on to a dream. On the boats and on the planes, they're coming to America. Never looking back again, they're coming to America. Home doesn't seem so far away. Okay, everywhere around the world, they're coming to America. Everywhere that flag's unfurled, they're coming to America. Free, freedom, the banner of freedom. Okay, Moses said that if they would obey God's laws, they would prosper in the land. If they failed to obey God's laws, they would not prosper in the land, but eventually be scattered among the heathen. And then he said, when both of these things have happened, when you've been prospered and then when you've been cursed, and shall call them in mind among the nations. In other words, remember all these things here. And shall return to the Lord thy God and obey his voice according to all that I commanded thee this day. Then the Lord will turn thy captivity and will gather thee from the nations. And Ezekiel said, I will sprinkle clean water on you, and a new heart will I give you, and a new spirit will I put in, and I will take away the stony heart of your flesh, and I will put in a new heart of flesh, and I will put my spirit within you, and I will cause you to walk in my statutes, and shall keep my judgments and do them, and shall dwell in the land I gave to your fathers, and ye shall be my people, and I will be my God. So, I wanted to, before I get too big into this thing, that the law has a spiritual basis. Even the law, the ancient law of Moses, it isn't just the law of carnal commands. It has a spiritual base. Therefore, all things that you would do unto others, therefore, whatsoever that men would do unto you, do ye unto them. For this is the law and the prophets. Jesus is saying the essence of what the whole law is about is do unto others as you would have others do unto you. Or in other words, don't do to other people what you wouldn't want them to do to you. And you kind of see this even in some of the Old Testament laws. Do not seek revenge or bear a grudge against one of your people, but love your neighbor as yourself. But the stranger that dwelleth with you, that is, shall be as one born among you. In other words, the stranger means foreigner. So the foreigner, the person who's not of your nation or country, they should, the same laws apply to them. You're not going to have one set of laws for people you like, another set of laws for the people you don't, because you were also strangers in the land of Egypt. And of course, whatsoever we sow, we reap. So, you can't make a fool out of God. Whatever we plant, we harvest. So that's why the Old Testament law basically has this idea of an eye for an eye or a tooth for a tooth, because when we trespass against someone else, okay, then we've incurred a debt. It's called a transgression, okay? And we're supposed to make restitution. We're supposed to pay back what you stole, or if someone kills your cow, they're supposed to make good cow for cow, breach for breach. The idea is justice. Justice is the lesser law. The law of justice says that restitution needs to be made when there is a thing. So justice is the negative expression of law of the harvest. Don't do to others what you don't want them to do to you. Render justice, fracture for fracture, eye for eye. The basis of this political law is always in effect against those who transgress, whereas mercy is the positive expression of that. Love others. Do others as you would want them to do you. Repent. If you figure you've wronged someone, make voluntary restitution. Make it good for you. That's the higher law. It fulfills the purpose of the lesser law. Now, this is something really interesting that I found from Wikipedia, and I think again, the Golden Rule is arguably the most essential basis for the modern concept of human rights, in which each individual has a right to just treatment and a reciprocal responsibility to ensure justice to others. The notion that the Golden Rule pertains to rights per se is a contemporary interpretation and hasn't got anything to do with its origins, but basically it is the foundation of the concept of inalienable rights in the Declaration of Independence. In other words, when you begin to obey my law, the law, to restore justice in the earth, to restore mercy in the earth, I will return your captivity. There are really two forms of law: ruler's law and people's law. Ruler's law is he who makes the law rules, and rulers don't have to obey their own laws. Look at Congress. They pass all kinds of laws and they exempt themselves from having to follow it. So having kings and queens and dictators and tyrants and communism and even the idea of a theocracy, basically the idea that God makes the rules. Of course, the idea there is whose version of God's rules are you going to have? That's the trick with that. But it's always the idea that that it's based on just the fact that the authority figure makes the rules. But the common law basically is the idea that every person has the right to be treated justly and fairly, and therefore conscience is the basis of law. If I wouldn't want it done to me, I shouldn't do it to someone else, and therefore if I did something that I wouldn't want have done to me, I've done something wrong. I will write my law on their hearts. and on their inward parts. Okay, I will put a new spirit into them. Our republic and the reign of the judges were an exercise in common law, as were the Anglo-Saxon laws. And I won't get into this thing. I mean, America rebelled because their rights weren't being upheld and established a modern-day republic with this idea kind of at the root of it of justice, and that God is the king. God is the source of the rights comes from God, who is the king. God is the ruler. In fact, look at this. That's reflected in one of our American hymns, "My Country 'Tis of Thee." Our Father is God. Again, whether we recognize it or not, we are the descendants of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Author of liberty, protect us by thy might, great God, our King. Americans understood that our King was God. I will bring them unto their own land, and I will make one king over them, even my servant David. And they shall no more be two nations, but they shall be one nation upon the mountains of Israel, the land I gave to Jacob. To show kind of the spirit of our founding fathers, this is a song that I have on an album I have. And I love this song. Let tyrants shake their iron rod and slavery clang her galling chains. We fear them not. We trust in God. New England's God forever reigns. Howell and Burgoyne and Clinton too, with Prescott and Cornwallis joined, together plot our overthrow in one infernal league combined. When God inspired us to the fight, their ranks were broke, their lines were forced, their ships were shattered in our sight, or swiftly driven from our coast. The foe walks in with haughty stride, our troops advance with martial noise. Their veterans flee before our youth, and generals yield to beardless boys. What grateful offering shall we bring? What shall we render to the Lord? Loud hallelujahs let us sing and praise his name. I want to remind you that God says he was going to do this not for our sakes, but for his name's sake. Now I come to the final part where I get into the prophetic part of this whole thing. And this is kind of where I've been leading up to this whole time. And I'll tell you the story. I was at a Nature Sunshine convention in Washington, D.C. back in the 80s. And there has been a talk about our founding fathers and our republic and, and the things of our freedom, our country, and by a former Miss America. And she was singing "Oh Beautiful for Spacious Skies," which I think ought to have been our national anthem instead of "Oh Say Can You See." And she got to this part, "Oh beautiful for patriot dream that sees beyond the years. Thine alabaster cities gleam, undimmed by human tears." And I had this incredible spiritual experience, this vision of the millennium, of the era of peace, of the nations of the earth dwelling in peace with each other, and as a vision of our founding fathers and the things that they were laying down. And I had this incredible spiritual feeling come over me, this incredible power of the Spirit. And I go, wow, we're talking about our country. This is not, church. This isn't religion. Why am I feeling this way? And God said to me, because America is the modern nation of Israel, and I'll prove it to you. And I was led to go into the Bible, and I was told to open chapter 38 of Ezekiel, where it talks about the prophecy involving Gog and the land of Magog, the chief princes of Meshech and Tubal, who will come against Israel in the last days. According to a lot of people, the descendants of Japheth became the Orientals. And so when it talks about Gog and Meshech and Tubal, those are the descendants of Japheth. And actually a modern Aramaic translation literally says China and Mongolia, in other words, the Asians, come against. And it describes the land that they're going to attack. And it says, so I'm reading this, and by the way, this is the first scripture I was led to. I was led to a whole bunch of others, and eventually, after a lot of study, I came to understand what I've been presenting to you tonight. Thou shalt be brought into the land that is brought back from the sword. In other words, has been set free or redeemed or bought by the sword, which means suggests a revolution, that is gathered out of many people against the mountains of Israel. And remember, Israel is not Judah. Just have to go back to that thing. Israel is not Judah. Israel is the descendants of the lost 10 tribes. We established that, which have always been waste, i.e. wilderness. In other words, this land was a wilderness before the children of Israel inherited it. But it has been brought forth out of the nations, and they dwell safely, all of them. And thou shalt say, I will go up to the land of unwalled villages. I will go to them that are at rest, that dwell safely, all of them dwelling without walls and having neither bars nor gates, to take a spoil and to take a prey, to turn thine hand upon the desolate places that are now inhabited. So here's some things. The Middle East has been continuously inhabited since biblical times. It was never uninhabited. It was not, the modern nation of Israel was not set up by a revolution. It is not the people of Israel. They don't dwell safely over there without bars, walls, or gates. They have constant threats of terrorism. They have huge military presence. They have constant guards. Okay? They're not a wilderness that is now inhabited. And they've got, this describes this people as having cattle and goods in the midst of the land. And why is the enemy coming? To carry away silver and gold, to take cattle and goods, to take a great spoil. And that day when my people Israel dwelleth safely shalt thou not know it. So what I'm saying is that Spirit said to me, that battle, everybody talks about Armageddon, this great battle fought in the last days, is going to be fought against Israel. Not Judea, but Israel. Okay? And so you go back and you start rereading all these prophecies, and you get it straight which is Israel and which is Judah. Who are the sons of Israel and who are the sons of Judah? It sure puts a completely different slant on the prophecies. So I got here the things I've been making the point, the mountains of Israel, not the Judah, the land promised to Jacob. Okay? And the reason this is so that the heathen will know me. Okay? And basically God says that he will defend us. Now, and not for our sakes, again, which, by the way, is a theme, if I'd have gotten more time to go into Isaiah. This is not about us. This is about us being purified. Anyway, it says that he'll destroy them. And there's a whole thing that I know about, this whole thing about the fire and brimstone and hail, and sometime maybe I'll get my friend Tony Larson to get on with me and we'll do a webinar on that whole thing. But after God says he'll defeat the enemy, he says, so the house of Israel shall know that I am the Lord their God from that day forward. And the heathen shall know that the house of Israel went into captivity because of their iniquity. And now will I bring again, or bring back, or in other words, turn around the captivity of Jacob, and have mercy upon all the house of Israel, after they have borne their shame and their iniquity wherein they trespass against me, when they shall dwell securely on their own lands with no one to hurt them, when I gathered them from among the nations and brought them out of the cities of their enemies, that I am sanctified in the midst of many nations. So in other words, God gave us a great blessing. He gave us this land of liberty. He opened this up, and as I'm going to say in a minute, we're really screwing it up, but we're going to get chastened. We're going to get chastened pretty bad, but ultimately, okay, God's going to defend us, not as individuals, but defend us as a group, so that he can once and for all establish kingdom. So, okay. Like I said, there's a lot to this, And I wanted to go into, I had this whole thing of wanting to go into Isaiah and how to understand Isaiah's prophecies and blah, 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 and I don't have time for it. So I'm going to concentrate on another passage that talks about Ephraim, and I think is talking about us. Again, woe to the crown of prides, to the drunkards of Ephraim, whose glorious beauty is the fading flower on the head of the fat valleys that are overcome wine. An Aramaic translation, or no, a different translation, it's not Aramaic, it's a more modern translation, says, woe to the garlands of glory of the drunkards of Ephraim, their crowning splendor has become fading reeds. You know, we are a bankrupt nation right now. We became rich and powerful, and we became obsessed with our riches and power. We're obsessed with our own power. We're obsessed with our own wealth. We're obsessed with a lot of things. And I think that's a pretty good description of what we've become. But the Lord has a mighty and strong one who has a tempest of hail and a destroying storm, a flood of waters overflowing, shall cast down to the earth with the hand the crown of pride. The drunkards of Ephraim shall be trodden under feet, and this glorious beauty, which is at the head of the fat valley, shall be a fading flower, and as a hasty fruit in the summer, when he that hath looked upon it seeth it while it is yet in his hand, he eateth it. Again, a little different translation, I think, makes this a little clearer. My Lord has in store one mighty and strong, so on and so forth. And the fading wreaths, the crowns of glory, and the heads of the opulent shall be like the first ripe fruit before the summer harvest. Okay, the real harvest hasn't become. What we have had in this nation is like the first ripe fruit, the beginning, the foundation, the start of it. It isn't the end of it. You know, until the era of peace is established, where all nations of the earth dwell in peace, because Israel finally fulfills its promise to bring, to bless all nations and bring about, peace to the world. We're kind of just a foreshadowing of that, a beginning of it, a foundation of that. The Patriot's dream is seeing beyond the years to something that's going to happen in the future. Because it says, and in that day, now this is why this can't be prophesying of Isaiah's day, because in Isaiah's day the Syrians captured them away, Israel was divorced, and blah blah blah. But after this particular battle, when Ephraim's pride is cast down, and that day shall the Lord of hosts be for a crown of glory, instead of our opulence and our wealth and our riches being a crown of glory. The Lord of hosts shall be a crown of glory, for a diadem of beauty unto the residue of his people, the ones who escaped the battle. And for a spirit of judgment, or for strength them that turned the battle at the gate. Well, the battle wasn't turned at the gate in those days. The Assyrian came and carried them away captive, and they were gone. This time the battle is turned away at the gate. But here's the point. Those good people who are spared, also erred in judgment. The priest and the prophet erred through strong drink. They err in vision. They stumble in judgment. We live in a culture that is just so insane that it's really hard to find anything good and pure and beautiful anywhere. And so it's hard for us to really know pure truth, because everything is just so distorted. And that's why I really try to be very humble about all of this. There may be a lot of things that I'm wrong about, a lot of things I still don't understand, but I do very strongly believe that God kept his promises and is keeping his promises and will keep his promises. And one of the reasons why I wanted to talk about this is because in this same chapter it mentions something about, hear ye the word of the Lord, ye scornful men that rule this people which is in Jerusalem. Because you have said that we've made a covenant with death, and with hell we are in agreement. When the overflowing scourge, this great thing that's going to sweep through, it's going to knock down the pride of the children of Ephraim, shall pass through, won't come to us. We've made lies our refuge, and under falsehood have we hid ourselves. And remember that Ephraim was not ruled by Jerusalem at the time of this prophecy, again, in the Old Testament. Now, I know that, most of you aren't probably on this webinar aren't from a Mormon background, but I am. And there's a thing in the Book of Mormon that talks about secret combinations and works of darkness that were built up, that will be among us, that are built up to get power and gain, and basically to overthrow the freedom of all nations, kindreds, tongues, and people. In other words, to set up a what? A one world government and basically destroy all mankind. Well, welcome to corporate America. I had a friend who was an attorney, one of the few honest attorneys I actually have ever met in my life. And he said after studying at the Harvard Law School, he came to the conclusion that corporations were the secret combinations that the Book of Mormon prophesied about. We are basically controlled, completely controlled by a privately held corporation called the Federal Reserve that completely controls our economy and our money supply. A handful of international corporations control the majority of the media, TV, magazines, newspapers. There's 5 corporations that own virtually every major media outlet in the United States and control everything that goes through them. Corporate interests bribe our officials in Washington and basically pass laws that are in their interests. And the principles of our constitutional republic and our freedom and the beliefs of our founding fathers and the whole thing is just virtually being shredded right now, completely shredded. And with that, I'm going to ask my friend Gary to come on. And Gary, you there?
Yes, Steve, I am.
Gary, you used to work for the CIA, right?
Yes.
So we have had major discussions about the people who are controlling things behind the scenes, right?
Yeah, and you might be surprised. There's probably only 20 families that control the entire world, including the media and everything else.
And you've told me that they have a particular form of worship.
Yes, they are Satan worshippers, absolutely 100% Satan worshippers.
Mm-hmm.
And they are doing everything opposite of what the Bible does. In fact, something you said before, that you met an honest attorney. People have had visions before, but I didn't know anybody said they actually met an honest attorney. So that's what you said at the beginning about being a prophet. I mean, that alone.
He was a very poor attorney, by the way. He was not a wealthy one.
Okay. I just had to say I have never heard that claim ever mentioned by anybody in all the history I've read. But it's obvious, I mean, if anybody looks, that we are going into a one-world government, if it's not already signed, that, the countries, all of them are being controlled. The ones that aren't being controlled are the ones America's at war with.
Yeah. In other words, the nations we attack are the ones that won't knuckle under to the one world government, right?
Yes, whose money is actually backed by something. The Federal Reserve, prints money out of nothing and then charges you interest on it.
Which, by the way, is a principle contrary to biblical principles, the charging of usury on money.
They take the Bible, actually. They know the Bible probably better than most people, and they do it backwards.
So, interesting question about the things. Again, I know we've had lots of discussions this. You've had some lawsuits leveled against you for quoting scriptures, right?
Yes. Because they called it proselytizing. The court system years ago would have been on my side, but now it's like just pay them. You've offended somebody. So, basically, I am afraid sometimes to speak because I don't know who might be offended, and the processor certainly knows my address.
Well, it's interesting.
Yeah. I was going to say, everybody is afraid to speak now in a country that's guaranteeing freedom of speech, because you can have hate speech, insightful speech, offensive speech. All that is now really, some of it is civil, some of it is criminal. So, and offensive speech is considered a speech that offends anybody for any reason whatsoever if you look up the bill. Yeah, what number it is.
So in other words, we're free to speak as long as we don't offend anybody. You know, there's a passage in Isaiah about woe to them that make a man an offender for a word.
Yes.
In other words, an offender for what they say. You know, that's because we have a right to is a God-given right to speak, you know, what we believe.
And, you know, one of the things that you know, people don't realize is every right that you have in the Bible, right to free speech, you know, which comes actually from the Bible, the Constitution, it doesn't have any exemptions. You don't have the right to free assembly if there's a terrorist attack. Nothing takes that away. It is endowed by the Creator and supposedly stays forever. But apparently, if there's a crime wave or a flood, all the rights that are given to you are taken away, which is completely anti-constitutional. But most people are afraid to say anything or speak out.
Right.
Go ahead, Stephen.
Yeah, so basically we're sort of in bondage in Egypt again.
Well, yeah.
Actually, we're in bondage to Babylon, but
more than you think. You know, they had slaves. The big crime was letting slaves read. And the reason slaves couldn't read or were not allowed to read was because then they would know they were slaves. Well, now they don't have to worry about that. Nobody reads anymore, so sort of take care of that.
Yeah. Well, one other thing that is and it's kind of, we've talked about, it's kind of interesting that the one, you know, religious group that is really attacked and downplayed are people who are Christians, right?
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, if you were to quote the Koran, or you were to quote, you know, Buddha, or quote some other thing, nobody's going to get offended or upset. But you quote the Bible, and suddenly people are up in arms.
Right now is a good time to look at it. Where I am at in New England, there's no Christmas music on the radio, no Christmas music in stores. You're lucky to get a Happy Holidays. And years ago, there were Christmas parties, Christmas music, Christmas songs. They are slowly evaporating, and the big enemy is Christianity, which proves there is a lot of validity behind Christianity, or they wouldn't be so adamant to attack it so powerfully that it's given rise to a new group, I'm sure, now I don't know if you're familiar with, what I call the evangelical atheists.
Yeah. Now, someone just asked me a point and says, are you saying that there's a coming war between the U.S. and China on American soil? And actually, that's the way I read that prophecy. That's the way I read it when I read it in the 1980s, was that this great battle that's going to be fought between the children of Japheth and the house of Israel isn't going to be fought in the Middle East. It's going to be fought here. It's going to be fought. And here's an interesting thing. You can almost see us being set up for this, can't you, Gary?
Well, America's giving Chinese toxic debt. And yes, I can see it exactly happening.
I mean, we are so in debt to China that we're over our eyeballs in debt to China, and we're going to default on it, right?
Yes.
At some point, we're going to default on it. And do you think that the Chinese are going to be really happy about that? And especially if we're like weakened in our country and our economy is like down?
I can't anybody be happy about that. And it's more than default. We've given them paper that is absolutely no good.
Yeah, we basically have handed them no good paper money, you know, and they're sitting on all this no good paper money that's going to be worthless. Yes.
It would be like me writing you out a check for $100 billion. And as long as you don't try to cash it, I guess I'm okay.
Yeah, you know. Right. We just save up the checks, you know, but there was nothing to back that up.
No, everything I give them will bounce, and it's like it's a very good possibility. But the other thing was to destroy Christianity, which I think that they've done quite effectively, because I think most Christians are afraid to speak. And you know, when I was a kid, they had prayer in school that was normal. Now there's no prayer in school. In fact, they replaced prayer in school with homosexual studies. And that's what we're talking about in the kindergarten and in first grade. Yeah, so you have the perversion society. They've made people completely genderless. And that's all part of the program. And what's amazing is how well they did it. Oh, not to mention the dumbing down of America.
Oh yeah, we have been so dumbed down. The whole thing of the federal government getting involved in education and basically what they've done to supposedly improve education. Anybody who understands how people learn knows that that's not going to improve education. So it's literally to dumb us down. I mean, we're being dumbed down, and we're being dumbed down on multiple fronts because we're being dumbed down because we're being fed junk. You know, all kinds of toxic food, toxic chemicals, junk. In fact, this is where I wish I could go on and on with this, because the word that was translated as sorcery in the New Testament basically is the word pharmakeos, which means mixer of poisons, and it's the root word of the words pharmacy, pharmacist, and pharmaceutical. And I would say that we are all being poisoned right and left. Poisoned not just with, the toxic pharmaceutical drugs, which don't ever really heal us, but also with pesticides, herbicides, chemicals, pollution. And in the New Testament, in the book of Revelation, it says when Babylon is destroyed, she's destroyed because of her sorceries. And that word sorcery is pharmakeos, the mixers of poisons.
Absolutely. When you have a country and 20% of it is on antidepressants. Now, what's funny about antidepressants is they don't make you happy at all. In fact, if you read the warning labels on antidepressants, it causes depression, suicide, and homicide. I mean, that's, kind of, a strange thing. Because if you read any of the old literature or old classics, nobody was depressed.
Yeah.
Nobody had depression. Nobody had the diseases that we have now. You talk about the modern world, cancer rate is 3 times higher now than it was 5 years ago. The autism rate, and that comes from the vaccinations. That's not even hidden anymore. It comes from vaccinations. Used to be 1 out of 260,000 kids were autistic. Now it's 1 out of 17. Nobody says, hey, there's something wrong here.
Yeah.
People speak up, and they don't really live long, or their businesses are gone, or their assets are seized. So we do live in a society of fear, and it's almost like double speak, like George Orwell. People go, there's no New World Order, that doesn't exist. And then, say, yes, it does. Don't say it too loud, you can get into trouble. We're just proof it exists. So,
now, Gary, you and I talked about this, and you how sometimes are like, because you and I both see how much inroad these people have made into basically lording over the whole world, and the destruction and the chaos and everything that they have done. And someone put the thing, what is Babylon? Well, Babylon is the worldwide economic system that we live under. It's because when Babylon is destroyed and the nations stand afar off from her, say, oh, there's no more of the silks and scarlets and fine twined linens and blah, blah, and the merchanting and trafficking and everything else like that. It's this huge consumer debt economic system that basically controls the world. And I didn't have a chance to get into all that. But I guess I will say this. I didn't put this into the presentation because, again, I didn't know how long it would take me to get through this. But, I laugh when everybody is worried about them, like putting a chip in the back of your hand or on your forehead for the mark of the beast, because it says, if you don't have the mark of the beast, you can't buy or sell. In other words, you can't participate in the economy without the mark of the beast. So tell me, Gary, if you open a checking account, or you get a job, or you want to have a credit card, or you want to participate in the modern economy in any way, what do you have to have?
Social Security number.
And what is tell us a little about the nature of the Social Security card. The name is in all caps, right?
Yes, all caps mean everybody is named in all caps on Social Security card, but you have in the old ones is not to be used for identification purposes. You see how far that one went.
Yes.
But even your driver's license is in all capital letters. And if you look at headstones, they're in all capital letters as well. And that's not how your name is spelled. That means you are actually, as you're born, you are a corporation being traded in various exchanges across the world, where people actually bet and bank on you and receive your death benefits. So you are, when you see anything on your driver's license, you as the corporation, you are a director of the old corporation that you don't own.
Let me really clarify what Gary just said here. Whenever legally a name is printed in all caps, it means it is a corporation. So your Social Security card makes you, under that Social Security number, a corporation. And a corporation is a child of the state, or in other words, a slave of the state. And you can't participate in the economy of Babylon without your little slave number. Okay? And so you don't have to wait for it to get tattooed on your forehead or whatever. We're already there. We're already living under the system of Babylon. The thing is that Babylon is going to fall. And so, Gary, you almost despair, sometimes, because we've talked about this, of how are we going to get out of this, right?
Yeah.
But here in Isaiah, and this is what I keep coming back to, because when God showed me these passages of Scripture, and every time I pray about this, it says, therefore, saith the Lord, I will lay in Zion. Zion is the opposite of Babylon. Zion is the people who are pure in heart, who love each other. For a foundation, a stone, a tried stone, a precious cornerstone, a sure foundation. That, by the way, is all language referring to Christ. Judgment will I also lay to the line, and righteousness the plummet, and hail shall sweep away the refuge of lies. And your covenant, speaking to the scornful men who rule this people, okay, your covenant with death shall be disannulled, and your agreement with hell, your Satan worshiping, will not stand. When the overflowing scourge shall pass through, ye shall be trodden down by it. What is coming is going to destroy Babylon. And so what I think we need to do is figure out how to get out of it. How to start being prepared to not be dependent on Babylon. And that's what I saw when I was 15 and again when I was 20 was a collapse of the electrical grid. And basically, if the electrical grid goes down, everything ceases. The lifeblood of Babylon, which is the flow of money, stops. When the flow of money stops, the beast dies. And quite frankly, I think that's the only way we're going to escape is if the electrical grid goes down. Because right now with our cell phones, they can track us everywhere. They can track all of our transactions with the internet, everything. We live in a society where we are so enslaved to the society, and it's been happening little by little. The freedom that was bought for us, we've sort of sold it for a mess of pottage. And so here are some of the ways in which understanding law would change things. First of all, our economic principles could be really easily solved with principles from the Mosaic Law, because first of all, charging interest on money is illegal and unethical, and I won't go into the whole reasons why it's unethical, but maybe we can talk about that later. Second, since the Constitution says that only gold and silver can be legal tender, none of the money in this country is legal according to the Constitution, so therefore all American debt is fraudulent. Therefore, if we declared a year of Jubilee, which is basically a year in which all debts are wiped out, we could jumpstart the economy tomorrow, reboot it, and so forth. Of course, if we did that, China wouldn't be too happy because they'd be stuck with a whole bunch of worthless paper dollars. Also, we need to get back to an understanding of the common law, to the idea of inalienable rights. The government is not our boss. Okay? Government was never intended to be our boss. Our government leaders are supposed to be public servants who we are hiring to help protect our inalienable rights, the rights God gave us. Also, we need to restore justice to our legal system with laws that apply to everyone, including public servants. I mean, we can't have two sets of laws. That's not fair. Congress needs, if they're going to pass laws, they better obey the laws they pass. And one of the things I'm really in favor of is fully informed juries. One of the concepts of American law and Anglo-Saxon law that comes down from our fathers is that The jury has the right to vote their conscience. In other words, any jury in America under the principles of the Republic has the right to nullify the actions of the government. That's how the power stays with the people. And we've totally lost that. We've totally lost the idea that, first of all, we're supposed to have grand juries that can indict public officials for disobeying the law. And second of all, we're supposed to have fully informed juries where people vote their conscience. The ultimate thing here is the higher law is the law gets written on our hearts, and the law of love and understanding of fairness and principles of justice is not like some rigid legal system. The fact that people sitting on a jury can go with their conscience means that there is heart in the law. There is mercy in the law. Anyway, just some interesting thoughts. I highly recommend if you want to read some more about this, and we'll hang on the line. I've got some comments, Gary, and we'll talk about some of the comments. You can read this great book, and I found it's available. It's a downloadable PDF on the internet, so you don't even have to order it, called Judah's Scepter and Joseph's Birthright. I found this after I was told that America was Israel, and it has a whole bunch of stuff that I haven't even begun to cover about this. And there's also a book called Heirs of the Promise, which has that quotes about the history of how the Anglo-Saxon and the Gauls and all that kind of stuff in there. That's really cool. And I also recommend a book called Let There Be Light, which is basically understanding the Aramaic culture in which the Bible was written, which will really help you, read the Bible a little bit better. Here are some resources that talk about this. When I read some of this, though, I put a little note here. There's stuff arguing over which one is Ephraim, whether Britain's Ephraim and we're Manasseh, and I'm like, oh, just crap, just forget it all. It's mainly to help understand that the children of Israel became the Christian nations, and this was the new covenant, and this is the beginnings, and God is wooing us back to him, ultimately with us fulfilling the destiny that was promised to our fathers of blessing all nations of the earth. Please remember that where much is given, much is expected, because a lot of people use this stuff as an excuse for bigotry and whatever. It's no great blessing to be the chosen of God unless you're being the least and the servant of all, because that's we're supposed to be serving other people. I didn't get a chance to go into like understanding Isaiah, but when you understand parallelism and a poetic form called chiasmas, throughout the book of Isaiah, the word mountain is used to symbolize nations. And so I'm going to close before we do this with this quote. And it shall come to pass in the last days that the mountain, i.e. the nation, of the Lord's house is the house of Israel, shall be established in the top, or the Hebrew at the head of the mountains or the nations, and shall be exalted above the hills, or the smaller nations, and all nations shall flow unto it. So let's look at some of the questions and comments that people have made here, and I hope that you have enjoyed this and you've learned some interesting things. So someone says, the internet will become a system by which every transaction will be controlled. This is the system of the beast Babylon. I knew that, but the center must be in a physical place that controls everything. Do these people have a physical center somewhere, Gary? Or
where they work out of?
Yeah.
Yes, the city-states.
The city-states?
Yes, Washington, D.C., London City, the Vatican, and Israel.
Uh-huh. So when it says, ye scornful men who rule this people, which is at Jerusalem, some of these people actually are centered in Jerusalem?
Well, they're in 4 places that I know of. Washington, D.C. is a city-state. It's got its own laws. London City is not part of London. In fact, just without getting into detail, Washington, D.C. is not really a state. It's not really a city. Nor is Israel always called the state of Israel because it's a state and a country simultaneously. And London City is exempt from basically the Magna Carta, all London rules. So they've set up their own city-states. There are 5 of them. I can only remember 4 offhand.
Okay, someone said that my wife and I are amazed at how accurately you've dealt with the issue of prophetic history. We hope you have a recording. Yes, there will be a recording. Been saying the same things for 40 years. They said, truth as far as we have understanding. Okay, let's see. We are of like mind, even if there's a bit of deviation later, we are walking the same path. Yeah, here's the thing, okay? The fact of the matter is that, like I said, I don't claim to know the whole picture or the whole truth. We live in a nation, thank God, that gives us the freedom. They're supposed to give us the freedom to worship as we choose, but that's sort of rapidly being eroded away from us. And I don't consider anybody who's seeking to follow God and follow truth as, my enemy. I know who the real enemy is because I worked with people who've been ritualistically abused by Satan worshipers prior to the time I met Gary, and I knew and understand their tactics and so forth really, really well. And that's, again, like I said, there were so many tangents I could have gone off with this into so many different things. It was, when I met Gary, though, it was the first time I actually had some real tangible evidence of some of the stuff that going through.
Well, actually, there are more places that worship Satan than you'd imagine. It doesn't say Satan worshiping outside. It always has some other name.
Yeah. Someone says, we Catholics call ourselves the church. In the Old Testament, the church was usually referred to as Israel. We are the church of Adam and Eve, Abraham, blah, blah, blah. When Old Testament prophecies refer to Israel, and many times it means the church, which is continuous with the Catholic Church. Well, that's kind of the interpretation. David is a reference to the Messiah. Yeah, the Messiah did come through David, but here's the thing that if you go and read the book Judah's Scepter and Joseph's Birthright, you'll really understand that there's an unconditional promise made to David that he would not want for a man ruling over the house of Israel forever. And yet, 500 years before Christ was born, the dynasty ends in the Bible. That can't be. Plus, the scepter shall not part to Judah until Shiloh come, and to him will the gathering of the people be. Well, if that was reference to the first coming, the people didn't gather to him the first time he came. So basically, the idea is that there has been a continuous dynasty of the tribe of Judah, and furthermore, the actual descendants of Israel are what we're talking about. The literal seed of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, literally, as were promised, became a great nation and great nations. And I think that's amazing because it's like, wow, these were things that were uttered 4,000 years ago. Someone said that many instances where the 13 has to do with Masonic symbolism. Well, there's no doubt that the founding fathers were Masons. And some people think that means that they were like tied up in an evil cult. Other people think that the Masons actually had some knowledge about the concept of the freedom and some of these things that they'd been kept, kind of buried, and they saw a final opportunity to start implementing something different. But that's up to you to decide. Okay, some things. Are you saying there's a coming war between the U.S. and China on American soil? Yeah, I dealt with that. Someone said, yes, the Chinese have openly said they are planning to attack America. They want our resources and land for their people. That makes sense. Someone else said that they had a psychic several years ago who saw Chinese battleships in New York Harbor. That's interesting. Someone says, we as a nation have too long, especially in recent times, turned our back on God and basic Christian principles. More and more we are beset by evil in the world in our midst. We do now what we have never thought or done openly in the past. We seem to be proud and pompous with our sins as a nation. That being said, God, though allowing penalties, will cut it all short and redeem his people. Each of us as Christians must remain strong without compromise, as so many have already done. Thank you for this message. Yeah, you're welcome. Then he mentions some things about the King of the South, and I'll have to talk to him. Chumman says the Chinese are purchasing land and mines in Idaho to set up a huge factory there. That's very interesting. What about the context of New Iraq? You know, Gary, you said something really interesting, and this is something that has been bugging me for a long time. Basically, the international banking cartel, when they have when a leader gets in the head of one of the countries who says, I'm not going to participate in this system, the first thing they do is they try to bribe him and promise him a lot of money if he'll knuckle under with them. And if that doesn't work, then they try to foment a revolution or assassinate him. The CIA goes in and tries to assassinate him or foment a revolution. And if that doesn't, then they decide to stir up the public, go to war, and take him down.
Yep.
Is what I'm saying right?
Well, they've been doing it in Iran since most of it. I mean, it's even declassified. There's no, they assume nobody's going to read any of this stuff. America has put Saddam Hussein into power, and everybody else that they.
In other words, we put Saddam Hussein into power, and then when he wouldn't play along, then decided to take him down, right?
Yes.
So that's the stuff that's scary to me, is that, you know, we're totally manipulated into going to war against countries, told these guys are bad guys, and in reality, it's all basically to get people to knuckle under to this system that is happening.
Well, they used to say politicians would deal us in hope. Now they deal us in fear.
Yeah. Well, there's another one here. What scripture am I referring to as Gog and Magog or China? Okay, the Gog and Magog are the children of Gog, Magog, Meshach, and Tubal are the children of Japheth. Most people who are biblical scholars believe the Orientals are the children of Japheth. And I got the thing where it actually was translated as China and Mongolia from that Nura Foundation, which has that book, The Seven Keys, which is a translation of the scripture from the original Aramaic. However, I've long believed that the children of Japheth, which God enlarged, okay, God shall enlarge Japheth, okay, so who is the most plentiful people on the world? The Orientals, okay. That right there points to the idea that that's probably who those people are referring to. Whatever, they are the people who would have the biggest reason to attack us anyway in our modern times. Someone saying, thanks, do more. Yeah, if you'd like to call and talk to me about, let's see, let's see, okay. Have I seen the movie Zeitgeist? Yes, I have. If you read the laws of divorcement, God could not remarry Israel, but a people who were not a people was the Gentiles. Okay, yeah. Yes, I understand what you're saying, and that's actually an interesting point. God, you know, the Old Testament law says, you know, you can't, if you put away a wife because she's unfaithful, you can't take her back. But if you die, the covenant is disannulled, which is why the disciples were not sent to the lost sheep of the house of Israel until after Christ had died and been resurrected, because then the old covenant was dead because because of the disannulment through death, and it allowed a new covenant to a new mercy to come forward. That's an interesting thing too. From the beginning of history, Babylon, the physical Babylon, played an important role in prophecy. Yes, but one of the things that I think that you might consider when looking at this is that these were the events of those days were used as archetypes. Most of the scripture, the book of Isaiah in particular, is almost all written in poetry. And in poetry, you use a simile and metaphor and other things to convey your meaning. And so a lot of times people read this really literally without understanding the idea of kind of the poetic things that are happening. Someone said, do I think that it's, do I get involved with, do you feel it's useless to try to change things the government is doing, like the Occupy movements, petitions? I send in my petitions and I do stuff like that. I don't have too much hope in it, but I figure if I don't do something, if good people do nothing, then I'm basically condoning what's going on. So I do my best to do something, even though I don't necessarily feel it's going to be doing a lot. Someone asked, is New York City a city-state?
Actually, that was the fifth one. Sorry. I should have known that one. I was just too close to home.
Okay. Yeah, Daniel also prophesied, and I didn't get into the prophecies of Daniel, I know too. In the 50s through the 70s, America was at odds with the Soviet Union and China. It was commonly felt that because of the shelling of something that we would end up in war with that bloc. Coming to understanding biblical prophecy eased my mind. In the 89, with the collapse of the Soviet Union, for a brief time it appeared we had no enemies, but then the strife took over. You have presented this a lot better than I could have. Thank you for your efforts. Thank you, Joe. I appreciate that. Someone said, would I consider doing another webinar and continuing this? And yeah, if you would be, if there are people who'd be interested in doing this, I would love to go more into some of the stuff in Isaiah and in the book of Revelations. Someone says, living here is not like living under communism, which I defected from 25 years ago, and it's been going downhill ever since. Amen. I feel like I grew up, being taught that, having to be searched and have your ID shown everywhere and all this kind of stuff was what communists did, and all of a sudden we're doing it. It's been really
well, look at the TSA. It's actually just there to dehumanize people.
Say it again?
The Transportation Safety Administration is there to dehumanize people.
Oh yeah, and it does. It makes you feel like you're in cattle. I did promise I would do some survival webinars, and I had to postpone it. And I really would like to do some emergency preparedness webinars because I think so forth. Would you all advocate the founding of not-for-profit groups as a potential antidote? No, I actually think that ultimately individual repentance and letting us, rely on God is what's ultimately going to be able to be the thing. Daniel prophecy is literally prophecy. I'm not sure what you're referring to with yes, Babylon has a physical location. And so does Assyria, has a physical location in the Middle East. And a lot of people do read these prophecies as literally, taking those current nations forward into modern times and basically saying, that all these prophecies basically pertain to the Middle Eastern area. But I didn't go into all this, but what I'm trying to show you, there's a bigger thing going on than that. That literally, when Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob were promised that a multitude of nations would come out of their loins, a multitude of nations did come out of their loins, literally, that their enemies would be God would drive their enemies before them, and He would enlarge them, and He would. But it's all leading towards something, and that's what the prophecies are talking about, which is ultimately for God to establish peace on the earth and so forth. So I will post the slides, and I will also post the recording of the webinar. And and I can't see any other questions. Or I'm really not interested in like getting into like really big debates over stuff like this. Oh, wait a second. Someone said, many years ago, over 30 years in Bible school, we had a speaker come telling us that he had seen vast amounts of one world money. Do you know anything about that? I have heard that they want to have a one world money supply. Is that true? Gary?
They already have it. It just looks different in other countries. It's like license plates, basically federalized. But the one world money supply, well, look at the European Union.
Yeah.
They stopped it, yeah. The
right.
euro. So, yeah, it's...
Yeah, I mean,
basically... There's the Chinese also speaking about, as the United States, of a one world currency, so it's not really a rumor. And anything you hear today was planned 20, 30 years ago, so...
Yeah. Well, this has been a battle that's been going on for a long, long time between the forces of light and the forces of darkness, and ultimately, I totally have faith the forces of light are going to win. Someone said, "Do you feel that those of us getting this info, prepared to survive, are being led to do something with this information?" I hope so. I mainly wanted to just put this out because, like I said, I was listening to this, guy on this thing, quoting these passages of scripture about Israel and the prophecies about Israel in here and Israel in there and this and that, and he was referring all over to Judea and the Middle East. And I just like something inside me snapped because I've known for many, many years that the descendants of Israel are the Europeans and the Americans and all of these other nations, and not that we're all righteous. Okay, I never said we're all righteous, and God still hasn't totally restored us back to the knowledge of who we are and whatever. So obviously, these prophecies are still being fulfilled. But the point is that if you understand that we are the children of the promise, that then what that is this is to basically help you believe and understand that in spite of the fact that things are going to get worse and they're going to look darker and things are going to get pretty bad, that if we will repent, if we will humble ourselves, if we will rely on God, ultimately we will win. And like I said, I'd love to go through the whole Isaiah story with that, but I'll have to wait for another time. I really don't like, debating scripture. Okay, well, Gary, do you have any parting comments?
Oh, I really enjoyed your webinar, Steve.
Oh, well, thank you for coming on and talking with me a little about, some of the problems we're facing, because that's part of the reason I want to do this, is because I see the things that are happening to us, and I know that at some point we're going to have to be delivered. So please feel free to email me privately if you are interested in this, and like I said, if there's some more interest, I might try to put together something and talk a little bit about the prophecy of Isaiah or something. But I agonized over this. I've spent 2 whole weekends trying to put this together, and so I hope that you enjoyed it, and I hope it's inspired you, because studying this stuff again has truly inspired me that there is hope, and that ultimately, if we rely on God, that we will prevail. Okay. Thanks, Gary, and thanks, everybody, and good night.
Thank you, Stephen.